So last week, Bill Maher had Milo Yiannopoulos on his show, and there was a lot of controversy surrounding his appearance because by having him on, critics alleged that you're kind of legitimizing the alt-right and giving them a platform, but I actually disagree with this notion because I do believe in political dialogue, and I think that it's important for us to expose ourselves to voices outside of our own echo chambers because that's how you grow. That's how discussion in the country moves forward. And, I disagree with a lot of liberals when it comes to the protests at college campuses against Milo Yiannopoulos. I think that the UC Berkeley riot did more damage to the liberals than it did to Milo. So, I'm in favor of free speech, and I wasn't against Milo's appearance. And really, I'll just say this. A lot of people asked my opinion on Milo before, and I didn't have a response because I didn't have much exposure to Milo. I previously saw him on, I think, the David Pakman show for the first time when he was talking about Gamergate, and there was nothing really off-putting about him. But now that, this is my first real exposure to him once he blew up, he was really pretentious. He tried too hard to be edgy, so I didn't like Milo, and I think that putting him on the show kind of exposed him, like Bill Maher argued. However, there was one moment in this episode that really pissed me off, and I wasn't necessarily pissed off at Milo so much as I was just disappointed in Bill Maher because I would have expected better from him.
Pronouns are so important. If you call Caitlyn Jenner he, you're a bad person. So
yeah, I did it on purpose.
You did. So this is a man
I misgendered this person.
Right. So this is a man, born man, who
thinks that he might be a girl.
Okay.
And
you have a problem with that?
No, I don't have a problem with it, but I think that women and girls should be protected from having men who are confused about their sexual identities in their bathrooms. That's
not unreasonable.
That person...
Are you fucking kidding me? So, I expected that from Milo. I did not, however, expect Bill Maher to agree with this just, quite frankly, stupid notion that transgender women pose a threat to women and children because they want to use the bathroom of their choice of the gender that they identify as. I think that's stupid, and I think that's a really harmful statement, and it's misinformation. They used the same argument against gay men. They said that, we shouldn't be allowed in the same locker rooms as heterosexual men because we're going to be predators, and we're going to prey on them. They also claim that we're dangerous to children because we're going to try to recruit kids to be gay, so that way we have more people to date. It's just bullshit. And one part that also kind of rubbed me the wrong way was when Bill Maher implied that if you misgender someone, then, you're kind of demonized and they call you a bad person if you don't refer to Caitlyn Jenner as a female. But nobody's doing that. And, Milo Yiannopoulos, he's an asshole. He says that he does it on purpose. Well, you're just being a dick. Why would you be a dick? Don't be a dick. But to Bill Maher's point, I have someone who's transgender in my family, and I've misgendered this individual on multiple occasions. I correct myself, and we move on. Nobody tries to demonize me. Nobody tries to make me feel like a piece of shit. It's just a part of life. The reason why people are discriminatory against transgender people is for the same reason why they discriminate against gay people. It's because we violate gender norms. That's why we group in the LGBT community. Because if you're a man, if you're born with a penis, you're supposed to act masculine and be attracted to women. If you're a woman, you're supposed to act feminine and be attracted to men. And if you violate those gender norms, then you're kind of demonized and marginalized, and you have fucking Milo Yiannopoulos wearing a pearl necklace, and he's sitting here talking about how other people are confused about their gender. Look, if you believe in freedom, then be consistent. Support the freedom of transgender people to identify as the gender that they want to. And, to be fair to both of them here, they're not necessarily saying that they're against transgender people just unequivocally. What they're against is the fact that they prey on people in bathrooms. They say that, transgender women are really just men dressing up as women, so that way they can claim that they identify as a woman and then go creep on women and children in the bathrooms. But thankfully, Larry Wilmore was there to actually dispel this false notion.
So if you say, well, that person is weird or they want to commit sexual assault, then everybody thinks all transgender people want to do is commit sexual assault.
Well, they are disproportionately involved in those kinds of crimes.
They're what?
Vastly disproportionately involved in sex crime.
Who is?
Transgender people?
Yes. Based on what statistic?
I don't know.
That's not a controversial statistic. And
it is a controversial statistic.
And frankly, you
So Milo said they are vastly disproportionately involved in those kinds of crimes. It's not a controversial statistic. And Bill Maher just shrugged. Really, Bill? That is a controversial statistic. When you actually Google cases of transgender bathroom predators, you're going to find more articles debunking it as a myth than actual instances of sexual assault. But let's really be kind to Milo here. So the Conservative Liberty Council, they created a definitive list of sexual assaults that transgender people have committed. Now, in total, they only name 50 instances of alleged sexual assault, and these include sexual assaults from around the world, not just in the United States. And nearly all of these incidents on this list don't actually describe sexual assaults. So, for example, number 41 here links to an article about a transgender prisoner in the UK that won the right to be female in a female prison. No mention of sexual assault. You have another article where a sexual assault victim spoke out against a policy that allowed transgender people to use bathrooms as the gender that they identify as. No mention of sexual assault. And then when you get to the alleged creepers here, many of these stories discuss people who didn't like the fact that they had to share a bathroom with someone that was transgender, and they spoke out against it. Again, that is not an instance of sexual assault. That's just people who hate transgender people saying that they don't feel comfortable using the bathroom with someone who is identifying as the gender that doesn't coordinate with their birth sex. And I mean, when you actually get to the cases of groping or where someone exposes themselves to another individual, well, they're referring to someone in many cases that just wore one article of women's clothing, or they were cross-dressing. That's not the same thing as someone who is transgender. So, I mean, when you really narrow down the list to legitimate instances of sexual assault by someone who's legitimately transgender, you probably end up with less than 10 worldwide. What an epidemic we have on our hands here. Wow. But yet, Milo claims that this isn't a controversial statistic, and Bill Maher just shrugged. I mean, look, if you want to be a creeper, if you want to prey on women and children in the bathroom, I think there are a lot easier ways to do it. Why would you go through the hassle of getting breast augmentation surgery, changing your gender legally so that way you have an ID, so that way if somebody questions you, you can say, look, no, I identify as a woman. Why would you buy women's clothing? Why would you do all of this just so that way you can go watch women take a dump in the bathroom? It doesn't make sense to me. Sexual predators are just going to be sexual predators regardless. They're not going to go through all this work to become transgender, to prey on women. And even if we be extra kind to Milo here and we grant him not just all 50 of those cases, but let's say 100 cases occurred in the United States, that still is a statistically insignificant amount of sexual assaults committed by transgender people. So you're trying to create this hysteria about transgender people who just want to use the bathroom like everyone else. And look, quite frankly, I'd be more creeped out by sharing a bathroom with Milo than I would with any transgender person, but that doesn't mean I could ban Milo from using the bathroom. So what Milo is arguing for is a form of right-wing social justice warriorism. I think I just created a word, but I mean, him and Bill, they talk about left-wing SJWs, but this is them being offended and triggered by a transgender person and having to share a bathroom with a transgender person when they have no legitimate reason to question the motives of transgender people. So you're a right-wing SJW, and Bill Maher doesn't acknowledge that even though left-wing SJWs are a threat, right-wing SJWs are more of a threat because they actually have political power. I'm talking about evangelical Christians who are a huge, significant portion of the electorate that actually vote, that has political power. SJWs are made fun of by people on the left and the right. Right-wing SJWs, they get to be triggered by stupid things like transgender people using the bathroom, and nobody gives them shit for it.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.